Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started with this video. Welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to start with the part that I think you all would be really excited to hear about, and then we're going to work our way backwards. I'm actually going to explain all the things that you need to rent an apartment in Paris. So if you want to see all the nitty-gritty, if you really just want to know about what you need to rent an apartment in Paris, I'm going to give you guys a time marker to skip to here. And you can go ahead and go to that part, or you can just watch all the way through. So basically, I am apartment hunting. So I kind of got started super duper early because I am a student, and where I currently live, or where I live, was student housing. And so if you're no longer a student, you obviously are no longer eligible to live in that housing. But I think it was time to graduate, and I did student housing for 2 years in Paris, or almost 2 years, and I was just really ready. So hopefully you can see this, but I made a presentation for my Paris apartment hunt. And so we are gonna go through what this presentation includes and then see all the apartments that I toured. So I have a wonderful agenda. So the first thing is the roommate situation. I did consider roommates, but unfortunately all the people that I wanted to be roomies with, our timelines were very different. I had some friends who were still in leases and weren't going to be moving till the end of the summer. Some friends who didn't know what their situation was, had things in limbo, and some friends who, I don't think they were looking anymore. So I ended up looking as if, it was just going to be me. But if I could have split, a 1,500 euro rent with 2 people, that would have been amazing. That didn't work out that way, but that's fine. Next up, we've got my budgets. So my budget is between 700 and 1,100 euro. At present, I was paying 625 euros where I currently lived at student housing. And so, yeah, I was happy to up that. I thought 600 euros was not bad, but upping it would be fine for me. Okay. The next thing are my wants. So for my wants, I really want a washer and dryer on site. And for security reasons, I really did not want to be on the ground floor. The next thing are my preferred neighborhoods. So I have this lovely map. So in order of preference, I just had 5 neighborhoods that I was really considering. And I broke all those down. So the first apartment I toured was not in any of my dream neighborhoods. It was actually in the 17. And I discovered that the 17 is a pretty cute neighborhood. If you look at the map that I provided with my little presentation, it's kind of like that northwest part of Paris. So you're just behind kind of the Champs-Élysées area. You're not far from a lot of the cool things to do. I also did fall in love with this apartment just in general setup wise. I thought it was super duper cute. I really liked the kitchen. I think the kitchen was one of the best parts about this apartment. And it had a really nice modern updated bathroom. It was not on the ground floor. There were nice outdoor common spaces. So overall, I thought this was great, and I also felt nice that the landlord herself was French, but the couple living there was a French and American couple, and the landlord herself also lives abroad, so she's very accommodating to people who are not French, because that's kind of a big challenge, I feel in the French rental market. And she was also super duper nice and patient with me. I actually did end up sending her my dossier after this, and I was in consideration for it, but I ended up having to kind of withdraw my dossier in the end. Really did love this first apartment, fell in love with it from the first visit. The next apartment was also not in a dream neighborhood, but I found this one on Facebook, and the pictures on Facebook look super duper cute. And the only thing that I was kind of rolling my eyes at when I was headed to this was the fact that the landlord did not accept dossiers. She was basically just going off of vibes. As she said, she goes off of feeling, which I understand her reasoning for this. She explained that she knows how challenging it can be for non-French people to get apartments in France, and the dossier process can be such a kind of diluting process, but so many people showed up, so also I think going by feeling wasn't any more helpful, but IDK. But anyways, the pictures looked really nice. I messaged her, arranged this weeks in advance, and I was actually really excited to see this apartment. Unfortunately, when I got there, I didn't like it at all. Not only did I not like the vibes of the landlord herself, which I think that's kind of important if you can help it. I know that most of our situations you can't control your landlord, but the apartment itself, I really hated the layout. Right when you walked in, the kitchen was there, the bathroom was just like, I understand that European, especially French apartments are small, but the layout, like everything was built up to accommodate for how cramped it was, on top of the fact that it was on the ground floor. I just really didn't like this. I was actually quite underwhelmed. The pictures kind of sold it out much better than what it actually looked like. Okay, so this final apartment, still not in one of my dream neighborhoods, but honestly, the neighborhood itself was super duper peaceful. This ended up being near where I interned at UNESCO the year prior, and I have a few friends that actually live near this area. It's super close to my school. And I actually ended up having a oopsie because the landlord called me to tell me when she wanted me to come view the apartment, and obviously this conversation happened in French, so I misunderstood her, showed up early, and ended up having to like find a coffee shop down the street to wait for the actual time of the apartment showing. But I not only got great vibes from both the landlord and her daughter who showed the apartment, but I also liked the neighborhood. I found it to be very, very peaceful. The apartment was gorgeous. I think the best part about it is that it is like updated. Obviously things are in great condition, but they still kept a lot of the like classical aspects of the original architecture and design. There are not one but two fireplaces, and it was very well furnished. Like when they say furnished, they meant that. So it's really great, and it has a washing machine, so it's really nice. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is building out your dossier. So before we talk about the dossier, I do want to clarify some quick differences about the French apartment market versus the American apartment market to help you understand the dossier itself. So the first thing with American apartments is that a lot of them are new build, right? So you're typically, not only are they just new build, but you are doing the renting process through a leasing agency, a much more formalized process in that sense. And that is like your landlord of sorts, right? Here, you're oftentimes dealing with individual owners of apartments, of the homes that you're renting, and it's individual landlords. So that is kind of what accounts for the fact that A, it is pretty easy to break a lease here relative to the US, and B, why the market is it's very competitive and things move on and off the market very, very quickly. As on top of that, competitiveness and quickness is the fact that I am not French, and so it can be quite challenging when you are not French to find an apartment. So the basic things that your dossiers are going to need are three main things. The first is your identity documents. So if you are French, I mean, I don't think French people are probably watching, not French. Your passport works. I would probably also supplement passport with my visa. But for me, I already had my titre de séjour, so I submitted my titre de séjour. I did not submit my passport. I felt like that was enough. And the next thing is, beyond identity, they're going to want to know what and why you are in France, like what you're doing and why you're in France. So for me, student, I sent my certificat de scolarité, which is basically your certificate confirming that you're a student, confirming how long you're a student, etc., etc. If you're working, they're going to want your CDD or your CDI contract, things like that. The last thing are the financial documents, verification that you'll be able to pay your rent, basically. So for most students, most people honestly under a certain age, you're going to want a guarantor because many of us are probably not making exactly enough money to be a viable candidate in that respect without the guarantor. So the first option I want to if I had have known about this ahead of time, I would have done this because I feel like it's the cheapest and best option aside from having just an actual French guarantor. And this is having your bank be your guarantor. So I would highly recommend that you look more into this, especially if you're a student, because I learned about this after the fact and I kind of wish I had learned about it before because it would have been really helpful and I would have saved a lot of money. So a lot of schools, including my school, I'm at Sciences Po, will have deals with banks so that they encourage their students to open accounts with these banks. So not only do you get like a discounted cost for opening a bank account with that bank, but they also will offer a discounted guarantor service, basically. Way discounted, I think, than other things you'll find on the market. And like I said, I learned about this after the fact, but if I had known about it ahead of time, I would have done this. Your next option is going to be the option that I chose. So I decided to get my guarantor through guarantor. You could also just try to submit like your individual, like you could have, if you have like your parents or your guarantor, for instance, but they are obviously not living in France, you can have your parents sign a guarantor letter, and then you compile basically a file that includes their identity documents, their last 3 pay stubs, and kind of like a worker, a salary, a work contract. And you can submit that individually to a landlord to prove your finances on top of your other documents to prove your own personal finances. You can do either or. I personally opted for the guarantor, because you submit those same documents to guarantor. They compile it into kind of like a certificate guaranteeing that this person can pay rent up to a certain point of rent, right? So you submit those same documents, but guarantor gives a just kind of filer certificate confirming that without you having to submit those personal and very important documents each time individually to a landlord. So it's up to you. I also read online and heard from other people that because guarantor is well known, it also helps to kind of solidify that document. So I chose that. However, the thing with guarantor is that it does come at a price. So it's a certain percentage, I believe, that they calculate of the final rent that you end up paying, that you end up being guaranteed for. And so for me, I think I'm going to end up paying about 500 euros total at the end of the year, which is, it's chunky. I think I already paid it, actually. I just went ahead and paid it. So if you are content with paying that price and paying that price for that, I think like the extra name of guarantor, and also I think just the secured, like the privacy that comes with, I would recommend that. Other services guarantor also offers is the fact that you can search for apartments and housing like through their website and put what you're looking for on their website, and different agencies will reach out to you, and they will also contact you, and they offer you support services as you are both signing the guarantee and as well as signing your leasing contract. So it costs money, but there's some things that come with it. However, once again, it is up to you. I'm not trying to argue for exactly what is best. I'm just trying to tell you what is out there. But I personally, even though I didn't use this myself, I have friends that have used it. If you can get your guarantor through your bank, I think that's the best. I think it's the best for cost, and I think it's the best for convenience, and yeah. That is the dossier. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to link a blog post down below that also was super helpful to me. And she created the next thing that's really important, which is like a script for how you can communicate with landlords as you want to reach out to them. Because the French market is also a little bit more informal, you're usually going to be sending emails or calling sometimes, or messaging through websites like Gens de Confiance or Se Loger, a landlord through like a little chat, right? The main things you need to let them know are who you are, what you're doing in France very quickly, and if you have a guarantor or whatever, you give them very quickly, like, I am guaranteed for a rent up to this amount. Your apartment's very interesting to me. Could we set a date for myself to come view the apartment in person? Those are the main things you want to say. And if you have like your guarantee certificate, you can add those little details in there ahead of time, just so that maybe they know that you're serious. Once again, I'm telling you what I did and what other people I know have done. If you have a better way, please share it in the comments, because I think it's great for us all to be able to learn from each other. I think that the French apartment process can be scary and like mystical to us all, so I think we're all just trying to do like what works and like make ourselves, basically you want to make yourself look like a really good candidate, especially because not being French can really impact that. So I will go, that's really kind of all that they really want to know in that immediate message. Okay, so moving on, I'm gonna make sure we're good. Okay, so moving on, the next thing that we want to talk about is basically where to find apartments. Most of them are online, like I said, because you're not dealing with a rental agency. You're gonna be looking for apartments on sites like Facebook, for instance, Se Loger, Gens de Confiance, Lodges, Paris Attitude. There are a multitude of websites that you can find Paris apartments on. I think the most common thing that I've seen with people is like word of mouth. So either they're in like a Facebook group. For me, I'm in my student housing Facebook group for my school. So I found a few apartments on that. I also decided to go on Se Loger, which is like the most well-known website to find apartments on. They have everything on there. And then I ended up migrating to 2 different types of sites. So the next was Gens de Confiance, which is like an online marketplace essentially, but it's one where to get on it, you have to have 3 sponsors. So 3 people that are already on the site have to sponsor you to join it. And it's kind of seen as a more secure place. So the one thing with Se Loger is you will see a lot. You can see a lot, you can save your searches. It's really, really nice. That's where I started. But because there's so much and anybody can post on there, that also means you have to kind of sift through a lot of scams sometimes. And so that was why a friend recommended that I check out Gens de Confiance. And it took a little bit, maybe a day or 2 for me to get all 3 of my sponsors. But through like sending messages in group chats, I managed to find 3 people who were already on the website and who were willing to sponsor me. So once I got on there, I found a lot of really, really good listings. So Gens de Confiance has a lot of different things. They not only just have apartments, you can even rent like kind of like Airbnb, like you can rent, stay certain amounts of nights at places, people sell furniture, all kinds of stuff. And on top of Gens de Confiance, which is completely free normally once you get on, I did pay the 60 euros for the prioritaire access, like the priority access subscription, because my friend did the same, and this allowed her to see the listings when they were posted about a day, 1 to 3 days before they were sent out into the general Gens de Confiance marketplace. So you see things like as soon as they're posted, before the bulk of everyone on Gens de Confiance sees them. And I do think that that really helped me in finding my apartment. As I mentioned earlier, because of kind of the informality, in a sense, of the Paris housing market and the high competition, listings move quickly. So when I first got on Gens de Confiance, it was great because I was finding all these beautiful, beautiful listings. But I would send message after message after message, and when I would hear back, they were like, yeah, sorry, it's already rented. So what often happens here is a renter is going to probably set their day. They're going to post the listing, they're going to wait a few days maybe, and they're going to set the visit day. They usually will make their decision on who they're going to rent to, like, as soon as that day ends. Like, if they had 3 visitors that day to come see the apartment, if those people all sent their dossier, they're just going to pick the person that works best for them. So it moves super duper quickly. So I found that paying for the 60 euros became worth it to me because I'd already been on the website for about 30 days, doing a bunch of messages. I'd done a few tours, but I was missing some of the really, really good listings because they were like there and gone in a second. So once again, I'm not telling you have to do this. I also did kind of like rush my process a bit because of weird timing. My mom wanted to come help me look at and then ultimately ended up helping me move. But if you have time, you don't inherently have to pay the 60 euros. But I will say I do think it helped me because, like I said, the housing market here, it moves quick. So sometimes having that priority view to a really, really good listing is like, that's the benefit. And it's 60 euros for 3 months. And so not only did I pay for guarantor, but I paid for Gens de Confiance, and it did add up a bit. I will say that. It did. So that is Gens de Confiance. I quite like it. A lot of the listings I ended up touring towards the end were from Gens de Confiance, and then the other places I did find apartments to tour on Facebook. I think with Facebook, it's the same as Se Loger. Anybody can post, so with Facebook, you just have to be a bit more vigilant to make sure it's not a scam. And I think with Se Loger and Facebook, I would be a lot more hesitant to immediately sending my dossier. So there are a bunch of websites. The next thing are agencies. So there are different places where you can find Paris apartments. And I was wanting to do either like a physical agency, and I also found online agencies. So I kind of preferred the online agencies because I was a bit nervous about going to the physical agencies, but I have friends who use physical agencies, and basically they work like it's a real estate agency. So they find you listings and they tack a fee on top for whatever listing that they find you. And it is helpful, especially if you are not French, because they kind of help to facilitate or act as a mediator between yourself and the landlord. And so that also means that the landlord is more willing to kind of trust and like believe that you will be a good renter. But you know, it just depends. I've had friends who were like, yeah, the agency was helpful, but like, was it really worth it? And some people who didn't mind. The online agencies were cool, and I've kind of broken down like the fees that I found on their websites so that you can understand how they work. So I looked at Lodges and Paris Attitude. Of all the agency websites I looked at, I think that they were the best. In the end, I think agencies are generally going to be like more expensive. So you could probably find the same listing that you find on an agency list website for less. And so it's kind of up to which you think is worth it in the end. For a lot of those of us who are in my situation, it's like you end up paying it because it makes you feel more safe or secure that you're going to find a listing. But I have friends who use agencies and they were still looking for apartments for months. So like I said, these are the options that are out there, and I'm giving you all the information so that you can kind of see like, is this worth it for me? You know, do your opportunity, your cost risk analysis. I, in the end, didn't end up using an agency, but like I said, I have had friends that have used agencies. But I will say of all the websites, I think Lodges had the best apartments, but they're not going to write you a contract if you cannot guarantee why you're in France. So for my case, I was looking at Lodges and I was in contact with a Lodges agent, but she said that because my certificat de scolarité said that like my student status ended in August, she could not write me a leasing contract past August unless I secured either like I got another certificat de scolarité or I got a job and my work contract guaranteed that I'd be working for 6 months or more. Or just basically past a certain point, because I wanted a lease for a year. So she's like, she cannot write me a lease past August without some type of guarantee that I am here. So that's why I ended up not using Lodges. But they did have some interesting listings on there. The thing with agencies too is they don't always let you view the apartments. So I think it's great if you are not living in Paris and you like are kind of just trusting that like they guarantee the status and the quality of the listing itself, and you just want to make sure you have somewhere to move into when you come to the city. But even if not, I kind of think it's important to be able to view an apartment ahead of time. And some of them would let you view it, some of them wouldn't. They're a bit iffy about that. And so I did email and ask a few of them, and some of them were like, no, we're not going to let you see it beforehand. But what they do is they offer the full address oftentimes of the apartment on the website. So I did walk over just to see like, how do I feel about the general area? And a few of them I just didn't like the area, so I didn't end up going forward with the listing itself. But like I said, it is up to your discretion about what you are comfortable with and what you think is fine. The rental prices themselves are already going to be inflated, so it's up to you. You know what I mean about what you think is worth it. And I did find some cute little listings on both sites, but I did think Lodges had better listings. I will say, like I said, Jean de Confiance, I think, had the best listings, and I ended up paying the 60 euros for the priority access so that I could see every listing like as soon as they dropped on the site, because time and competition are your enemies in the Paris market, on top of, for my situation, not being French. So I found that really helped me, and the apartment that I ended up finding, I found it on Jean de Confiance. So yeah, oh, we're at the end of my presentation. Okay, that is that with that. I could talk about this forever, but let me like not be long-winded. And if you guys have any other questions, I'm super duper happy to answer them.